I've gotten into the habit recently of doing sort of retrospective or anniversary videos based on certain landmark comic book movies. I usually do this around a film's anniversary, or usually to commemorate when the latest version of said superhero is making his way to the big screen. There are two primary reasons for this. The first is because, honestly, it's a good, quick, and easy way to just get a video out there and hopefully ride the algorithm wave of people looking for content based on that particular character. I mean, them's the breaks here. But also, it's always a good idea to look back on your favorite movies with a fresh set of eyes after however many years to not only see if the particular movie holds up, but why and what exactly makes it stand the test of time. This week, however, we're doing things just a little bit differently. This week, on Friday, will mark the 5-year anniversary of Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, or Fan-4-Stick as it's affectionately been known as. Now yes, you might be thinking, wait, this movie is bad. Why would we possibly want to look back on this? What possible reason could there be for commemorating this film's anniversary? Because as important as it is to look back on your favorite movies with a set of fresh eyes, it could be equally as important to do the same with your least favorite movies as well. Maybe after all these years, your opinion on the film winds up changing and you find something that's actually good in the movie, one single thing of merit amongst a sea of bad cinematic choices. To be clear, Fantastic Four is not that movie. It is legit bad, but it still deserves being discussed even 5 years later. Perhaps there exists no phrase more hyperbolic than the worst comic book movie of all time. It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot when a beloved comic book character gets a big screen adaptation that's even slightly less than perfect. Most of the time, this is just pure hyperbole. The movie in question might not just be your cup of tea, or maybe it is legitimately bad, but rarely is it ever truly deserving of the title of worst ever. Most of the movies that get labeled as the worst ever or get put on worst of all time lists truly aren't. Movies like Spider-Man 3, The Dark Knight Rises, Superman Returns may have disappointed in certain aspects and may certainly be flawed in a lot of cases, but truly don't deserve the scorn they usually get. Then of course there's the matter of taste and preference. Many people, myself included, were not particularly fans of Joker's bleak, self-serious take on the character. By contrast, there were many others who were not a fan of Shazam's more whimsical take on the subject matter. Does this make either film the worst of all time? No, of course not. It's just that these films didn't particularly fit into certain people's wheelhouses. That's all. Looking forward to all the creative ways to get called a cuck for not liking Joker this time. Then you have the more cult movies. Movies that are generally regarded as bad for one reason or another by the majority of people, but do have strong, dedicated fan bases. Your Suicide Squads, your Venoms, your Punisher Warzones, movies like that. And then you have movies that get reevaluated over time. Batman and Robin, for example, was for the longest time the de facto worst comic book film ever made. Nowadays, it's pretty much just considered to be the wrong movie at the wrong time. Ang Lee's Hulk, sure, maybe back in 2003 it was considered the worst ever, but nowadays a lot of people look back on it fondly as this weird oddity where a filmmaker with a unique vision tried to do something new and different with an iconic character. No, for a comic book film to truly be considered one of the worst ever, it's gotta be a special kind of crap. The type of movie where nothing works on any level, and if there is a fan base for it, they're not speaking up because there's no hope in defending it. I'm talking your Catwomans, your Electras, real low-hanging fruit like Howard the Duck or any of the Crow sequels. Something like X-Men Origins Wolverine, which for my money is the lowest point in the entire X-Men series. And that's a series with a lot of low points. There are, of course, the obvious picks like the 1990s Captain America movie or that weird made-for-TV Phantom movie from a few years ago, but if you ask me, the one that checks all the boxes necessary to truly be considered the worst of all time is 2015's Fantastic Four, directed by Josh Trank. Before we move on, I do have to say I do feel kind of bad for picking on Fantastic Four. It is an easy target after all, and given the recent revelations of Josh Trank's poor mental health during and after production, it feels kind of crappy to say with such conviction that this is the worst of all time. But in the end, it doesn't change the fact that this movie's terrible. Everything about it is just so bad, there's really no redeeming qualities to it. Every frame is just one bad decision after the next. For those of you who may have missed it, and giving the box office results from back in the day, you probably did, Fantastic Four, or Fan Four Stick to help differentiate it from all the other Fantastic Four movies out there, was the latest attempt by 20th Century Fox to try and do a modern take on Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's classic creation. A group of young adults are imbued with superhuman abilities after being involved with an interdimensional accident. When one of them goes crazy and threatens to destroy the world, it takes the combined might of Sue and Johnny Storm, Reed Richards, and Ben Grimm to stop him and save the day. Now, judging the movie on its own merits as a movie, not as a Fantastic Four adaptation, not compared to the other Fantastic Four movies or any superhero movies for that matter, hell, not even taking into account all the behind the scenes turmoil, as a movie itself, it's very bad. It's obviously been hacked together to try and get into some sort of releasable state, but the resulting movie has a very inconsistent tone and no direction to speak of. The movie doesn't really know if it wants to be a serious science fiction film like 2001 or a dark human trauma like The Fly. All it knows is that it doesn't want to be a superhero film. The actors are clearly trying to do the best with what they have here, but they often come across as disinterested in what they have to say. Kate Mara and Miles Teller in particular look completely checked out in a lot of scenes in this movie. Not to mention, this movie looks like A lot of the film takes place in one of three locations: a boardroom, an underground military base, or the negative zone, and all three look bland and generic and boring. The negative zone in particular is a big disappointment because that could have been something cool and unique to see, but instead it just looks like a desert at night with a couple of weird lights. It's just a very poorly put together movie, but that alone does not make it one of the worst comic book films ever made. After all, Suicide Squad was also very poorly put together and was also famously hacked together as a result of a very troubled production. But at least Suicide Squad was recognizably Suicide Squad, even through the tattoos and tactical gear. It was very clearly trying to be a Suicide Squad movie, whereas Fantastic Four did not want to be a Fantastic Four movie. And really, 20th Century Fox has no one to blame for this but themselves. This movie only exists as sort of a way to extend their rights to these characters lest they revert back to Disney and Marvel. So the result was to just fart something out that would hopefully be hip and cool with the kids of 2015. And in the lead up to the release of the movie, it seems like every decision Josh Trank was making was getting scrutinized by fans and critics alike. A lot of the issues can stem from what Josh Trank wanted to do with this movie before we even saw a single picture of it. I'm not really talking about things like casting Michael B. Jordan and Kate Mara as Johnny and Sue Storm, although, to be fair, that was pretty eyebrow raising. And I'm not necessarily talking about the initial plans for Dr. Doom either, although let's talk about them because it's pretty stupid and it's sort of symbolic of the whole production. Infamously, actor Toby Kebbell let it slip that he wasn't going to be playing Victor Von Doom as we traditionally knew him to be, but rather he'd be playing a character called Victor Domashev, an antisocial blogger who wrote on message boards under the handle of Doom. This was, of course, an attempt to try and take Dr. Doom in a more realistic and grounded direction. I need to remind you, however, that Dr. Doom is the exact opposite of grounded and realistic. They did try to walk this back a bunch of times, but there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. It was very clear what Toby Kebbell said in that interview. Here it is so you can see for yourself.
He's Victor Domashev, not Victor Von Doom, and on blogging sites I'm Doom.
But ultimately, I think what undid the film is Josh Trank's weird insistence on making this a hard sci-fi body horror type film, a type of movie that was akin to the early works of David Cronenberg. Now, David Cronenberg is a great director. He's made a lot of great films. He even made an all-time great comic book movie with a history of violence. So it's understandable why somebody would want to ape his style. The problem is that David Cronenberg is also known for movies like Videodrome and Scanners and The Fly, movies where a lot of really gross and disgusting stuff happen to people out of nowhere. Stuff like this. That's not exactly something one thinks of initially when they think of the Fantastic Four. And as for hard sci-fi, if you don't know, that's science fiction that tries to take a more realistic look at the genre, something where technology either already exists or is plausible to exist in the next few years. Fantastic Four isn't exactly that. I mean, Reed Richards invents new devices off-panel to help him defeat space gods. Not exactly a plausible thing. This year, Polygon posted an article going through Josh Trank's entire career, from his work on editing the movie Big Fan to the production of Chronicle and Fantastic Four, and even his new film Capone. In that article, it was revealed that he was never really a fan of comic books, let alone the Fantastic Four. Really, he saw this movie as an attempt to talk about ideas and themes that he was interested in. Whether or not they were connected to Fantastic Four was irrelevant. And to be clear, a director does not have to be a fan of a particular character or of comics in general in order to make a good movie. Tim Burton and Ang Lee were famously not comic book readers before they made Batman and the Hulk, and those movies turned out fine. And again, going back to Joker, it's pretty clear that Todd Phillips was not a fan of comic books, but he understood the iconography and the power of the idea of Joker. Regardless of what you thought of the final product, it's very clear that they tried to get that message across in their film, and for the most part, they did. Fantastic Four doesn't really have anything equivalent to that. This kind of puts Fantastic Four in the same league as 2004's Catwoman movie, the one with Halle Berry. Both movies take their source material in weird, unrecognizable directions, and both of them fail miserably. The big difference, however, is that Catwoman, while also being a fairly better put together film, still remembers that this is a superhero movie. And superhero movies do need to have certain elements to them, like big, fantastical action sequences and certain iconography that needs to carry over. Fantastic Four doesn't even try that. And Catwoman came out in 2004. Sure, there have been a lot of superhero movies before that to show how to do it right, but that was still this weird early era where you can do unfaithful experiments like that. But in the 11 years since Catwoman and Fan4stick, there have been so many good to great superhero films that show how to do adaptations like this properly and successfully. Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, X-Men's First Class and Days of Future Past. Hell, even Hellboy 2 came out during this time period. All of them great comic book films to learn from. Fan4stick didn't learn anything from any of them. There's no excuse for that. And that is why I think ultimately Fantastic Four 2015 is the worst comic book movie of all time. Not just because it's a poorly made film, although it certainly is, but also because it doesn't even attempt to be a Fantastic Four film. Wanting to take a series that's known for whimsical, big epic science fiction and turn it into a weird, hard sci-fi body horror film isn't just missing the mark, it's intentionally missing the mark and trying to pass off the mark you accidentally hit as the intended better version. It's like if somebody took Brightburn and made it an actual Superman movie rather than just a dark pastiche of one. So why the hell bring this movie up? Why talk about this movie 5 years later when it's clearly not worth remembering, when it's clearly be better to just be forgotten? Well, because quite frankly, it shouldn't be forgotten. Sometimes it's just as important to remember bad films and films you don't like as much as it is to remember films you do like and good films overall. You can learn a lot from a bad movie, what works, what doesn't, what to look for in a bad film, or if you're actually making a movie, what mistakes to avoid in order to make your film better. Without bad movies, we generally wouldn't get good movies. Without Die Another Day, we wouldn't have gotten Casino Royale. Without Batman and Robin, we wouldn't have gotten Batman Begins. And now, thanks to Fan4stick, and of course the Walt Disney Company buying 20th Century Fox and assuming all of its assets into its weird conglomerate homunculus, we are now one step closer to getting a true Fantastic Four movie, one that can learn from the mistakes of the past in order to make a better one in the future. And if Josh Trank could bounce back from this movie, then I think it's pretty safe to assume that the Fantastic Four can do so as well. And hopefully we'll get to see them in a movie that's much closer to how they are in the comics rather than some person's weird deviation. So here's to you, Fantastic Four 2015. May we never see your likes around here again, but thank you for the lessons. Of course, what do you think of Fan 4 Stick? Do you agree it's the worst comic book movie ever made? Do you think there are ones out there that are even worse? Or do you actually like this movie? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. Oddly enough, this movie is streaming on Disney+, so if you really are curious and checking it out, you can check it out there. I will also have Amazon affiliate links in the description to some Fantastic Four comics to show you how they're supposed to be. And of course, this weekend is Uplink, presented by the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, August 8th and 9th. This Sunday at 1, Bob and I will have a panel where we talk about, who knows, probably retro gaming related. Be sure to check us out and check out all the other panels from people you actually like. And as always, don't forget that we have new videos on this channel every single Tuesday and Wednesday, with Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern being Wolf Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share it with a friend who, I don't know, likes trash, I guess. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time. Wash your hands, wear a mask, you know the drill by now.